Where should we go first? Well, let's go to Old Testament. Well, we don't have to go. I can quote it. Exodus chapter 20, the 9th commandment. I think that's in Exodus chapter 20 and verse 16. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Now, for the Old Testament Jew, in the way that he interpreted that, false witness, we mean by that a lie. Don't bear false witness. In other words, don't call black white and white black. Now, there's a surface interpretation. And it's valid, but it's not comprehensive or extensive enough to cover the basis. So for the Old Testament, 9th commandment, don't bear false witness, that would be a prohibition against calling black white and white black. All right, what about Colossians 3 and verse 9? Now we know that's a law because that's one of the 10 laws, 10 commandments, Exodus 20 and verse 16. I'm showing you there's the difference. We've got principles. And guess what we're going to find here? The exact same thing stated. If you don't comprehend all this yet, you're just going to have to either get into it more or just take my word for it. That in the Old Testament, we've got a commandment. The 9th one says, lie not one to another. He said, don't bear false witness to or about your neighbor. Lie not one to another. That's a law, a rule, a commandment. In short, it's bondage. Colossians 3:9, what does Colossians 3:9 say? Thou shalt not bear false witness. But this is not a law. This is a principle, and we say narrow because it tells us something particular. You see, broad principles like Matthew 7:12 don't name something in particular. They don't name something. Over there in Matthew 7:12, it was just do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, if you want to get particular, one thing you don't want people to do to you is lie to you. So now we're down to a narrow principle. It's still a principle. It's not a commandment or a law or a rule or a legalism here. It's still nothing but a principle. Lie not one to another, seeing that ye have put off the old man with his deeds. And because it is a principle, then we're to take that much further than the simple-minded Jew did of Exodus 20 and verse 16. We're to take it much further. Now, what does he mean here when he says lie not? Does he mean not to call black white and white black? Well, that's included. That's a lie. If you call black white and white black, that'd be a lie. But is that all that he means here? For a law, yes. You see, that's why I said laws can't touch gray areas. Gray areas are all touched and covered and dealt a death blow to with Christian principles because they'll cover anything. What about all these various forms of untruthfulness? It's not an out-and-out lie, but it has a shade of dishonesty to it. Would that be a lie? Well, according to the New Testament explanation and interpretation of this Old Testament law, most definitely, yes. For instance, just to think of some for instances, you can think of all types of places and times where a person can be caught in a compromising situation and not tell a lie, but at the same time tell a lie. Someone knocks on your door around 11:30 in the morning and you come stumbling to the door, wiping your eyes, yawning a little bit, and says, "Oh, brother, did I wake you up?" You say, "Oh, no, I've been up before. I've been up before." And what you mean is that I was up at 7 to go to the restroom and at 10:30 to go to the restroom. Now, did you tell a lie? No. He said, "Did I wake you up?" And really he didn't, because you were just coming out of your sleep right as he was walking up the walk to knock on your door. So technically, no, he didn't wake you up. But you know, what he really is asking you is, "Hey, lazy bones, have you been in the bed until 11:30 in the morning?" That's what he's asking you. Did you just get out of bed? And so you say, now listen to what I'm saying here. Here's a good example. You say, "I've been up before. I've been up." That's not telling me what I asked you, though, when you say, "I've been up." Why, are you talking about yesterday when you were up? Are you talking about all those times during the night you went to the restroom? I think you could call that been up. Sure, I was up. You could say, I was up earlier. Yeah, you were up, but did you get back in? That's what I want to know. You see, you can technically be telling the truth there, but in the eyes of God, that is a lie. Because that is dishonesty, but it's the technical truth. Brother, did I wake you up, or did you just get up? No, I've been up. And that's exactly right. He didn't wake you up, and you didn't just get up, you've been up before. But are you trying to lead him to think something else about you than is really true? Are you? Why, certainly you are. Why don't I just say yes? Lazy bones, I've been in the bed all morning long. And I stayed up to 4, so let me justify myself anyway. Or even if you didn't. He asked a question. Now, I can really get really narrow, you see. We're talking about narrow principles, really narrow in this area. What about a woman, sister in the body, who's had just a blessed day all day long? The children have been like cherubim. Which is a rare experience. But around 4:45, everything just seems to go wrong. And she knows hubby, old Ralphie's going to be home at 5. And so 5, she looks out and Ralph's driving up in the driveway. And so Tilda concocts this notion, well, I just sit down here on the couch, kind of sprawl out, mess my hair up a little bit, pull the bobby pins out. You know, you don't have to do all that. I don't want to go too far unless you think, well, I would never do that. Have you ever done what I'm saying in essence? And whenever Ralph comes in, you just, oh, it's crying. It's just really been a hard day. And what you're implying is this whole day has just really taken its toll on me. When you had a beautiful day. It was the last 15 minutes that weren't any good. And now you are portraying things like this has really been a bummer of a day. And you're wanting Ralph's sympathy. That's what you're wanting. Now, you see, you didn't tell him anything. You didn't tell him. You don't even have to say anything. Just look like you're just washed out on the couch. And he'll come in and wrap his arms around you. Oh, you've had a bad day. And you just smile and don't say anything. Just soak it all in. What you're doing, we're going to get narrow, more narrow than this in ethics. You have to. It covers everything. What you're doing is you're fostering a lie without saying anything. You're fostering a lie. You know, you have to correct that. Sometimes people try to praise you. If it's not true, you've got to correct it. Because if you don't, whether you've said anything or not, by virtue of the fact you said nothing, and they're praising you about a quality that's not true, they assume that it's true about you. They just, well, I guess it's true. I know it's true. And you have to say, no, wait a minute, I want to tell you that's not true. Because if I don't tell you that, you're going to go around thinking that it's true nonetheless. And if you never would have talked to me about it, I wouldn't be guilty. But now that you talked to me about it, now I'm guilty. Because I had an occasion to set the record straight. Pretty narrow. Any form of deception, the Bible counts as a lie. The little 16-year-old attractive Christian teenage girl who likes to go out with her tennis shoes and her boys' athletic shorts on with a slit up the side and they're 2 sizes too small. What she is telling people is something that's not true. What's a girl that's dressed like that telling people, I'm available? I'm an easy catch. I'm sexy. I'm seductive. That's what she's telling people, wearing those boys' shorts that are 2 sizes too short, too tight, too small. What's she telling people? She's telling people. You see, before even getting into dress, we can talk about lying. You can put clothing on in such a way that you're telling a lie about what you're wearing. Certainly. Certainly. The example I'm giving you right now. She's fostering a lie that she's available, when really she wouldn't dare do the deed. She's been brought up with good moral teaching in her life, so she wouldn't dare commit the act. But I'll dress like a whore if I want to, though. What are you telling people? I'm a slutty girl. And are you? No, you've never done anything wrong in that area. But the very clothes that you have on are fostering a lie. You think that's included in Colossians 3:9? Lie not one to another. You see, for Old Testament law, they said, I know what false witness means, calling black white and white black. But now, New Testament, it's not so easy anymore. Everybody knows what a lie is. They come and ask you, is it true? And it is, and you say no. But that is a shallow, shallow understanding of what lying is all about. You're courting that beautiful 23-year-old Christian girl in the church, and you've got good plans for marriage, and throughout your courting days, you just said, oh, darling, you have such beautifully straight, clean, white teeth. And she just smiles when you say it. And a couple of months after marriage, you wake up one morning to see her teeth staring at you from a glass of water. Now, what she has fostered was, those are my teeth. And you found out, looking at old skeleton next to you on the nightstand, what the truth is about Tilda's beautiful, white, straight, clean teeth. See, that's fostering a lie. You're fostering a lie, a deception, that these are my teeth, when really they are not your teeth. Or what about Christians are always caught up, the social Christian, in the social lie? What's a social lie? Well, you're over someone else's house to eat, and they have wrapped up, you don't know what's inside, but it's wrapped up fried swine's hide with the bristling hair still sticking off the outside. And after devouring that, which was difficult to do, your hostess said, well, did you enjoy the meal? And you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And so you say, swine hide oil. Give me the recipe for that. That is great. When really you're thinking, like was popular several years ago, oh, gag me with a spoon over this swine hide here. Well, I try to think of something that's really bad to make sure that we all know what I'm talking about here. Because if I got up heavenly hash, you may like it and I may not. So we'll stay with fried swine's hide with bristly hair sticking up on it. As soon as you see it, you think, gag me with a spoon over this thing. Well, that was the...
Bread and water.
That was a popular thing to say, I guess, several years ago. I never could get into saying that. Except to bother my wife over bad meals every now and then. I'd drive her up the wall saying, gag me with a spoon over there.
Praise God, I gotta use that one.
I think they used to say barf many years ago. But recent times, it's, oh, gag me with a spoon. You know, it's the real effeminate way of saying it. Well, so you, as the social Christian, what do you say whenever your hostess? I've been over people's places, and you can get some strange food at different people's places. Now, we were just over at someone's house not long ago. That's no reflection on them. Now, we enjoyed the meal, but I have to say that lest they be embarrassed. But I've been over many people's houses where you have to ask what it is. You really do. You think, you know, something like this is only suitable for the bush tribes in Africa. And yet it's a main course. I remember one time, just to give you a for instance that comes to mind, I never could forget it because it was a gag me with a spoon, for instance. We were over someone's house for breakfast. And they brought out this, well, it was an omelet is what it was. I knew what it was when I saw it. And I love omelets, but I don't like this doubly super extra strong sharp cheese. And it was just loaded with that bitter stuff. And it had all types of mushrooms. I like mushrooms, but I mean they were just growing out the sides of the thing. You know, grass growing on top of it. It was everything. I guess they were into health and nutrition. We were over there, I was over there to share with them some about the woman question. It was some women cooking breakfast for us. And it was all I could do to get that thing down. I mean, It's like one of these overgrown banana flip type deals. It was huge. Took up the whole plate. Filled with this bitter, bitter sharp cheese. I like cheese, but not sharp cheese. I don't go for that. Filled with that. And so I'm praying under my breath the whole time, Lord, don't let them ask, do I like this? And they didn't. They were too involved in wanting to ask biblical questions, so I was glad about that. But there you've got the occasion of telling what you really think, or of using the little Christian social lie. Well, yes, that was good. That was good. You ever been caught in a position like that before?
Amen.
Where you're served up heavenly hash? Those are mutually antagonistic terms. If it's hash, it is not from heaven. Well, you know what Esau got in trouble eating. There's a big bowl of that hash. You know, that's the economical way to eat. You can't afford to buy individual items. So just throw it all in a pot, dynamite it. You know, that really is. We don't eat that way. You know, people say, that Brother Rawls, he is picky. I'm not picky. I'm culturally selective. Well, how often do you get to come to church and laugh at your pastor for 5 minutes? But no, I mean, I'm really not. I'm not picky because what I like is good food. It's good food. I like good food. I don't go for this. You've got leftover pecans and eggplant and tomatoes and some meat and onions and potatoes, and you throw all that together, dynamite it, and cook it for a while. It might be heavenly hash for you, but it's devil's food for me. You remember what Esau ate now, and he got into all types of trouble for eating that big pot of stew or hash. It's the economical way. You know, you eat what you can from it, and then you carve off the rest of it and throw all the bones in a pot and cook it all together. I don't go for eating like that. I don't know how I got off on that, except to say, no, I'm not picky. I'm really not. But I'm culturally selective in what I eat. It's more expensive to eat that way. You have to have your own little item that represents a certain thing. I've got what you call a compartmental stomach. I eat one thing at a time because I don't like it all mixed together. People say, well, it's all mixed together in your stomach. Not in mine. Not in mine.
Let's see it.
Well, you have to come up with that argument because people say it just all mixes together in the stomach. But I say no. Mine's compartmental. I've got certain compartments where certain types of food go. I'm not a casserole type person. Most true he-men, I don't think, are casserole type people, are you? You end up like Esau, selling your birthright for some of that stew or soupy, I don't know what, or heavenly hash or whatever they call it. I mean, there is a book out entitled Men Don't Eat Quiche, and I believe that. Maybe you haven't read that book before. Well, there's a famous book out. It's a bestseller. Men Don't Eat Quiche. I don't go for all that stuff all scrabbled together like scrambled eggs and all mixed up. But it's not because I'm picky. It's because I'm bright. I'm smart. I don't go for all. It's like hog slosh or something to throw all that stuff together. But some people, I hope I'm not bothering any cooks in here this morning. At least you'll know what to cook me whenever I come over. I don't want a big pot of leftovers. Give me my vegetables by themselves, not all mixed together with the meat and everything else. Well, the point is, most Christians, socially minded ones, are caught up in so-called social lies whenever the hostess said, well, what do you think of that dinner? And it can be fried swine's hide. And most of them will say, give me the recipe. And you imply by that, that's great. I'll try that on my enemies. You don't tell them that, but that's what you're going to do. That's a good, potent death herb is what it would be. Well, now that doesn't mean now that just because your hostess asks you, did you like it, that you have to say everything that you know. There are diplomatic ways that you can get out of it. Just because she gave you those new biscuits she made from her new recipe, you don't have to tell her that they looked and tasted like hockey pucks, because she probably won't appreciate that very much. But you can say they were different. They certainly were. I'll never be back here again. They were different. Or, so she gives you fried swine's hide. And did you like that, she says. So you say, so that means that you grow little piglets around your home then. Oh, yes, we do. Oh, yes, come and see them. And so you got her off the subject then. That's not lying. You didn't deceive her. You didn't make her think something that's not true about you. You made her think that you want to know about whether or not they raise pigs out in the backyard. All types of ways you can get out of the so-called social lie without embarrassing people's feelings. That's what I'm saying. Now, sometimes they box you in a corner and say, we're not going to go look at the pigs until you tell me what you think about that fried swine's hide. Then you say, all right, I'm going to let you know it's only worthy of bush tribes in Africa. We shouldn't be eating that around here. Well, there are some examples of lies there. Lies. Call them social lies, call them political lies, religious lies, whatever you want to. It's still some type and some form of deception. And since it is, you see, it can be something as small and as seemingly insignificant as her asking you, what do you think of that new recipe of biscuits that I made? And so you say, well, they were good. You don't have to tell her that they looked like hockey pucks, but you don't have to tell her they were good when they weren't. You can say, inquire of the recipe, so you'll know how not to make them whenever you make them. That doesn't necessarily mean you're taking that recipe home to use it, just, well, how did you make these? You want to make sure you don't make them with rocks like she did. Or maybe it's a hockey puck with dough over the outside, I don't know. Some biscuits are like that, though. No, Brother Ross isn't picky. I think that the church has a notion that Brother Ross is picky when it comes to eating. And I don't know where you ever got that notion. Because I'm not. I'm culturally selective. I like good food that's by itself, that's seasoned right, that tastes good. I don't like this at the end of the grocery period, the end of the week, throw everything in a pot together. Just believe God for the abundant life so you can throw the pot to the dogs and have enough to eat yourself at the end of the week. I mean, there is an answer to that. Now, if you're a man, you like casseroles, you eat your casseroles. I mean that with all my heart. You eat your casseroles. I'll eat mine whatever I like. You eat your casseroles. You don't bother me, I won't bother you. But if you come over to my house to eat, we're not having casseroles whenever you come over, though. We might have enchiladas. We're not having fried swine's hide that looks like an enchilada all rolled up, though. You can trick people in so many different ways to get them to eat things they don't want to eat. Oh, and you can't trick me, though, because you really can't. You know, some people just have super sensitive taste buds, and people say that's what makes them picky. It's really not, but my wife can cook something, and I mean just barely change it. Now, isn't this right? Barely change it for the next day, and I'll say you did something to it. And, you know, I'm always wary, because I'm like the automobile mechanic. You don't fix something that doesn't need to be fixed. That's a law of working on cars. Because as soon as you fix something that doesn't need to be, now it's going to need to be after you finish getting your hands in there. And once I find something good, don't touch it. Well, let's do a little bit different, make it better. No, 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 no. Don't touch it. You don't fix something that's not broken. If it's not broken, then you don't fix it. And if she changes just a tiny, tiny little thing, I don't care what it is, I can notice. I notice right away. Many times I just push it away. Say, we'll go back to the old way. I'll eat some bread or some cereal or something until dinner's ready. Real dinner is ready. It helps to have some cats and dogs around the place to feed them what you don't want. Well, whoever you're married to, if you're a wife out there, you've got to learn what your husband is like. You can't cook what I'd like. He might not like that.
I like what you like.
So, well, there's one, so his wife knows what to cook. Well, most men that I've met, I don't know if you're one of them. You might not be a true he-man. That's all right. But most men that I've met, like my dad, my granddad, all of us, we don't go for that casserole. All the girls in the family, they liked all that mushy stuff. You know, really mushy stuff. All mushed together. Like, have you ever had that asparagus with that white sauce on a piece of limp white bread? Oh, all the girls seem to like that. It's just too mushy for me. I want something I can bite. That's what teeth are for. I don't gum things. I've got my teeth. I don't just swallow them down. I want something I can chew. So I'm giving you what I think is a general characteristic of men. Do we need to take a poll to get off of this subject? To see who eats quiche and who doesn't eat quiche? Any men in here eat quiche? Oh, there's a few. Uh-oh. Well, you need to get that book from New York. Men don't eat quiche. And they should have on there, and women don't lift weights, but they do, nevertheless. Okay, how can we get back onto another subject? How about over to Hebrews chapter 10? Well, praise the Lord. So we found out who the true he-men were this morning. I mean, anybody who would take a bowl of soup over a pork chop, he's got a problem as far as I'm concerned. Well, I heard some amens. Now, the women, they like that old gushy soup is what they want. They don't want that pork chop. They want something that's hot or cold or salty or spicy or something that they can slurp on and wash around in their mouth for a while before it goes down. I don't go for that stuff. Okay, Hebrews chapter 10. We're getting beyond a lie, but we're coming to another principle. What about the principle set forth in verse 25? Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. Now, this, you see, is not a law or a rule that we all have to come to church every time the church doors are open. Now, you contrast that, hold your finger there, whatever, back to Exodus, set forth many places, but, for instance, back to Exodus 23, in verse 17, 3 times in the year all males shall appear before the Lord God. That was very, very critical and important, that the males for these 3 great annual solemn feasts and holy days present themselves before the Lord. That was a requirement. That was a law that they had to do. So we can find the law. We're talking about, attending religious services. There's the law for Israel. You go over here to Hebrews 10:25, and we've got a principle. And it doesn't say in this verse, thou shalt not miss one single service when your church meets. It doesn't say that. What word does it use here? Don't forsake. You see, you can miss 4 services because you're away on vacation, but you've not forsaken anything. It's deep in your heart, and you wish you were there whenever you're on vacation. So that's another thing entirely. People say, well, the Bible says don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together. That means I couldn't take a vacation. No, you can take a vacation. It's just that a lot of people take a vacation in their heart from the assembly, which is called forsaking the assembling of yourselves together. So we can't even bind you with that. Now, it's another matter if you want to go hunting every Sunday morning or something. You may run into scriptural problems with that. But since this isn't all-inclusive, then it couldn't be a law or a commandment, but rather a principle.
for the continuation of this
Now, it's another matter if you want to go hunting every Sunday morning or something, you may run into scriptural problems with that. But since this isn't all-inclusive, then it couldn't be a law or a commandment, but rather a principle. The principle is, let us be glad when they say it's time to go up to the house of the Lord. You've not forsaken the Lord and the gathering together of the saints and the koinonia in the body. You've not forsaken that in favor of something else. Okay, let me give you a few other examples before we close up. What about baptism? People say, now there is a law, a commandment. No. Baptism also is a principle. Not because God allows us various modes of baptism, sprinkling, immersion, pouring, whatever. But have you ever thought of this? People think, well, now here we found a commandment. I found one law. You said there are none in the New Testament. I found one rule that we're bound to, and that's baptism. Because have you ever thought of this? When and where do you get baptized? I've heard people say such things as the Jordan River is really the only valid place to be baptized. Well, now you're to a rule. Now you're to a legalism. Or, I've heard people say this, and I've thought about this myself. Would it be valid to baptize in a bathtub, assuming there's enough water the whole person can go under? Would it be valid to baptize in a lake? Would it be valid to baptize in a pond? Would it be valid to baptize in the ocean? What's similar about all of that? Standing bodies of water, still bodies of water. Would that be valid as compared to how they baptized, or I should say, where they baptize in the New Testament? Where they baptize? Rivers. Doesn't a river symbolize the flowing of the water, the washing away symbolically of one's old self, one's sins, and therefore the only valid place to baptize would have to be in a river. Now you see, this question concerning baptism will prove whether or not it's a law or it's a principle. Because I've thought of that before. What about the Jordan River? And really I didn't think too much about that. I knew that was ludicrous. What about a river, though? Wouldn't a river be more scriptural? Well, here's our point. The New Testament doesn't tell us that. The New Testament says go under the water, be immersed. And so it pretty much leaves that up to us where we want to be immersed. But from what that tells us, then the only stipulation is there has to be enough water so your whole body can go under it. Not just get wet. You could get in the shower and get wet all over, but so your whole body could be submerged. But does it tell us a river, lake, pond, ocean, tub, indoor concrete swimming pool? See, that the Bible leaves that up to us to make up our mind. And I'm not saying, because the Bible doesn't say, that one way, one place is more right than another place. I know whenever you've not been baptized correctly, such as sprinkling, you've not been baptized in the New Testament way. What about if you want to be baptized in an indoor concrete swimming pool? Would that be as valid as that water in the river that's flowing by that symbolically is washing away one's sins? Let me give you a contrast with that concerning what? I believe it concerns, well, of course it does. It's in the passage that would. Leprosy. What about Leviticus chapter 14? We're talking about water and cleansing and so forth. We're trying to show you where in the New Testament something is set forth as a principle. Under grace, something is set forth as a principle. The Old Testament, under law, it's set forth as a rule. Because of all of these things that Jesus and the apostles give us, whether it says lie not, you see, lie not's narrow, but what does lie not tell us not to do? Well, not to lie, but what's lying? Well, I gave you some examples of that, all types of things. He leaves it up to us to see what the import of that principle is. And people, when they would think, well, I found one in baptism, really haven't. Because what time of the year, and who baptizes you, and where do you get baptized, and what type of clothes do you have to have on? Should it be a Jewish robe that you have on? Should you have a Holy Spirit dove, since, the dove came down for Jesus in Matthew 3? Should you have a Holy Spirit dove attached to you? What should be done? The Bible doesn't tell us. So many of these things, people think they can get it all boxed up and figured out in a corner. It just won't work. And so look at this contrast here in Leviticus 14. The Lord spake to Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing. Now I'm using it because it speaks of cleansing. He shall be brought unto the priest, and the priest shall go forth out of the camp, and the priest shall look, and the priest shall behold, and see if there's a plague of leprosy, whether it's been healed. And the priest shall command to take for him, that's to be cleansed, 2 birds. They both have to be alive, both clean. Take cedar wood, take scarlet, take hyssop. The priest shall command that one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel over running water. And the living bird, he shall take it, and the cedar, and the scarlet, and the hyssop, and shall dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. Look at all of these stipulations here. He doesn't let you just go kill a bird. And if you've killed a bird and you're somewhere within 20 miles of water, that signifies the cleansing of the leper. No. Gives us stipulation after stipulation after stipulation. He shall sprinkle upon him that is to be cleansed from the leprosy 7 times. How many times should you be dunked under the water? The Bible doesn't tell us. Could you go 3 times to symbolize the triunity of God? I wouldn't say whether you could or couldn't. The Bible doesn't tell us. These are things that you have to think about. And what the Bible sets forth as being the principle, immersion in water, you have to hold to that. But beyond that, does it have to be in the Middle East to be baptized? There'd be no end. You see, as soon as you make one law, there's no end to it then. You've got to go on and on and on and on and on. Where does the Bible say you can't be dunked twice or 3 times or 17 times? See, I can't pass judgment on whether that's valid or not valid. I have to do what I think that I know and I want to do. And if someone else wants to be dunked 3 times in Jesus' name, it doesn't bother me. Because the New Testament doesn't specify things like that. And I'm not saying, in saying what I am, that one person might not be more right than another person. I'm just saying the New Testament doesn't say. The middle of verse 7, after 7 times he shall pronounce them clean. He shall let the living bird loose into the open field. And he that is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes. This is why the Old Testament is so long, by the way. It can't just state in verse 1, now cleanse the leper. It's got to give all of these legalistic stipulations that have to be done. And shave off his hair and wash himself in water, that he may be clean. And after that he shall come into the camp and shall tarry abroad out of his tent 7 days. On the 7th day, all of this will take place. The 8th day, verse 10, this will take place. And it just goes on and on. You know how long these chapters are dealing with leprosy here. And so although the New Testament, we've got the teaching of baptism, and there is only one way to baptize, and that is to immerse in water. That's all that the New Testament says, as well as in Jesus' name. That's what the New Testament teaches. Now, another example would be communion. Well, we've got a commandment here. No, again, it's no rule. Because again, we can raise the question, well, how often should we have communion? Should it be at night? They had it at night. Should it be at night, or what about during the daytime? Would night be more in line with Jesus, the Last Supper? What about the bread? How much should we eat? A whole loaf per person to make sure we partook of the whole redemption of Christ? As soon as you say one thing, you can't put a period to describing the bread, whether it's leavened or unleavened, whether it's whole wheat, stone ground, or regular white bread. Can it be a biscuit or a corn pone? Can it be? Does it have to be a full loaf of cooked bread? Is your bread, what it looks like, the same as an Israelite when they cooked bread in their ovens? Was it a big, full loaf of white bread? What about just a flat biscuit? What about a potato chip? Isn't that kind of the same thing? Isn't there some similarity between the starches in bread and the starches in a potato? Well, you see, that's why it's good to be free, but never are you free to violate these principles, though. You're free, we said before, that you are free to be guided by the Holy Spirit through the Word. And He'll guide you in line with what the will of God is. And it takes faith to trust that He'll guide you. When before you've never thought of these options, and now after this morning they're before your mind because I've just mentioned them. And you probably thought, well, it has to look like a piece of bread to have the bread and the cup. Could it be the crust from a pie? You know, a pie crust? That's bready stuff. That's doughy stuff. It's the same thing. It's doughy stuff. Well, like I said, as soon as you mention one thing, this is the way that it has to be. And what have all of the systems of men, what have they done? They have made things a certain way. You had to drink your communion out of a certain type of cup or chalice or whatever it is, a certain type. You couldn't just use a hat turned upside down that was waterproof and drink out of that. What if that's all you had, though? You're going to forego the communion because all you have is a 10-gallon hat that's waterproof that'll hold a lot of wine in it. Well, turn to Exodus 12. We'll wrap up with some verses here, hopefully. We're saying these lists, as soon as you give lists, they produce legalism. And everybody, well, even if you couldn't give a definition of legalism, you know when you're around a legalist. I've been around a lot of them before. They're just uncomfortable to be around. You can tell they're just so bound to those things they have to do that no one could tell them otherwise, and they feel superior in your presence because you don't do them just the way they do them. That's legalism. And most of the people in the churches are caught up in legalism, trying to get us to do things exactly their way, although they tell us that they're under grace. It's like the statement that said of the Baptists. You know, the Baptists were a persecuted people over in Europe, and they were persecuted for their religious beliefs. And so the Baptists fled Europe for America so that they could worship God freely as they chose and force everybody else to as well, which is exactly what the legalistic system is all about. Well, here in Exodus 12, now we've got the Passover that we'll say could be in some regard similar to the communion. Now, in the communion, as I say, we've got a little teaching on the communion, what it's all about, but when it comes to the ritual of performing it, that's when you get into trouble. You start putting down laws on when you partake and what type and all of this stuff. Verse 3, speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel. The 10th day of this month, he's going to tell us what day they have to do it. And do you realize it was the same day all the time? Only one exception. They could do it a month later, the Passover, remember, as set forth in the book of Numbers, if they accidentally were unclean by a dead body or had taken a foreign journey. There were two exceptions there, where they could have it a month later. But anyway, the exception was also made out to be a specific day, that it has to be this day. The 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. If the household's too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it, according to the number of the people. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, should be a male of the first year. You can take it from either the sheep or the goats. Can't be a dog or a horse or anything like that. Sheep or the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. How'd you like to have to remember all this? If you were a Jew, you had to remember all of this. Everything had to be done exactly according to plan. You see, we've got such a great deliverance living under grace now. We get to participate in the principles of God, but in complete, total freedom and liberty.
Hallelujah.
The whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. They shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts, and on the upper doorpost of the houses wherein they shall eat the flesh, and that night roast with fire. Can't be boiled, it's roast with fire. Unleavened bread with bitter herbs shall they eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden it all with water, but roast with fire his head and legs, so forth. Let nothing of it remain to the morning. Verse 11, thus shall ye eat it. Have your loins girt about, your shoes on your feet, your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste, because this is the Lord's Passover. Now, we're not told any of that stuff. When we come over to, well, Matthew 26 or 1 Corinthians 11 or any of those passages, we're not told any of this stuff when it comes to our participating in, I hate to call it a New Testament Passover because really it's not, but in the communion of the bread and cup. Certain things, certain principles are taught there, and the rest of it is left up to us. How much of this, what type of glass, when do you do it, how often? Many arguments over that. How often? Should it be twice a year, or 3 times a month, or every other Sunday, or every other Wednesday, or what? The Bible doesn't tell us that. And you see, the New Testament is known. You might never have noticed what a distinction there is. The New Testament is known for not having any laws, no rules. But it is filled with principles. Laws, as we interpreted them for you earlier, where it brings the conscience into bondage whether or not you do what's right according to the Word of God. It's tarot, it's a threatening, it's a binding obligation that's put over the person that we simply don't find in New Testament teaching. So, we've looked thus far, we haven't finished, but we'll put a period for it. For now, we've looked at 3 faults or shortcomings then of the rule book system. It's impractical, we said in the first place, to have enough laws to correspond to every situation. In the second place, even the best of manuals come short of touching gray areas. And we touched on a lot of gray areas just by example this morning, such as Colossians 3:9, lie not one to another. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means a whole lot. And in the third place, legalism. As soon as you write up a list, I don't care whether it's for the job, the 10 do's and don'ts of operating the machinery there. What about if such and such happens over here with such and such? Well, you don't have a rule that covers that. As soon as you make up a list, then inevitably it will be misused by additions, by subtractions, and by interpretation, because it just can't cover everything that's necessary. And as a result, people end up with a wrong, improper attitude toward it. You see, the Pharisees did toward the teaching in the Old Testament that was expressive of the character of God. They ended up with a wrong attitude toward that. And too many people today, in this era of grace, end up with a wrong attitude of even New Testament teaching. They still think that Sunday is the Lord's holy day, just like Saturday was for the Jews in the Old Testament. That was law. That's not grace. But then you can't go overboard the other area, the other direction, and practice antinomianism, where maybe you would violate some principles concerning Sunday or concerning any other day, for that matter. There's a balance. There's a balance somewhere. I said before that Christian ethics has to be able, the very reason we're studying this, it has to be able to strike a balance between the perversion of the law, which is legalism, and the perversion of grace, which is antinomianism. Because everybody wants to go to the left or to the right, either to a legalism to bind us with a commandment. And they'll find it in the New Testament and bind us with that. To bind us with that, or to allow us to be free on the basis of antinomianism, and say, well, didn't Paul say in Galatians 5:1 that now we're free? We've got liberty in Christ. Don't come into that yoke of bondage again. And so that means we're free to do whatever we desire to do. That's never the teaching of the New Testament. We're free not to sin, but we're free now to have both the desire and the ability to conquer sin. And there's all the difference in the world between what I first said and what I finished saying. So we're going to continue this next week then. We come to another aspect still of this 5th characteristic. Christian ethics is not a manual of rules, but a system of eternally right, which, by the way, speaks of absolutes of ethics. What is right has always been right. Eternally right and moral principles that we're to use by the Spirit's influence and direction to guide our life. Okay, praise the Lord.
Jesus there with Abraham and Pharaoh, did he, according to the New Testament, then tell a lie when he said that Sarah was his sister, when he really wanted to know whether or not she was his wife?
That'll be about 3 messages from now.
Hallelujah.
Or just looking it up there. You can think about it until then.
Let grace